أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المهديين المقتولين المظلومين ولعنة الله داعمة على أعدائهم أجمعين من يوم عداوتهم إلى يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقال السيدة الزهراء صلوات الله وسلامه عليها في دعائها الشريف: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. اللهم اكفني حسد الحاسدين وبغي الباغين وكيد الكائدين ومكر الماكرين والسحر السحرة والمردة والشياطين وهيلة المحتالين. Sayyidah Zahra salawatullahi wa salamu alayha, in the same dua, Allahumma salli ala, in the same dua that I narrated on the first night, now turns to another topic, which is the various kinds of evil that exist in this world. And she's beseeching Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's help in order to be protected, to be relieved of all these various kinds of shar and shurur in this world. And there's quite a bit of it. There's envy, there's rebellion, there's kaidul ka'idin, there's the plotting, that if someone is plotting my downfall, I ask for your protection from them. Makrul makirin, the people that are planning to deceive me. Wasihrul sahira, and the magic of the magician. Wal maradda wa shayateen. This part is very interesting now. And often we do find the mention of sihr and maradda. Maradda is not the same as sihr. Sihr is magic, of course, where maradda is another kind of delusion. It's another kind, where sihr is something performed by a human being. The sahira is a human that performs magic. Or performs some kind of delusionary trick, shall we say. I can often, for example, take someone into the middle of a lake and make them drown and things like this. Read this in the ahad, in the traditions. It's possible. Sayyid al-Khuy has a very long discussion on this, one of the longest discussions. Al-Khuy has it. But the second kind is maradda. Maradda is another kind of delusion or deception and trickery. And it can be performed by both demons. Well, it's performed by demons, but it's performed by demonic humans and demonic jinn. So it's another kind of evil. Wahilatul muhtalin, and those people that would try to present something in such a way that as if it's truth, but it's not really truth. Right? Those people who try to trick me using loopholes, for example. Hilatul muhtalin. The people that aren't really honest when they're giving me an explanation, but they're putting something in the fine print, and because of that I've missed this or missed that, and they know very well that they're trying to deceive me or deceive you. And we ask from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's protection from these kinds of predatory practices. But what I want to go into a little bit more depth here, which is, what is this evil? What is this profound shar and evil that Sayyidah Zahra is asking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection for? And in order to go into that, we have to go to the Quran, where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, well, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, of course, narrating here the voice of Iblis, where Iblis tells God, لَأُدِلَّنَّهُمْ وَلَأُمْنِيَنَّهُمْ, that I shall misguide them, وَلَأُمْنِيَنَّهُمْ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَا يُبَتِّكُنَّ آذَانَ الْأَنْعَامِ وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَا يُغَيِّرَنَّ خَلْقَ اللَّهِ وَمَنْ يَتَّخِذْ شَيْطَانَ وَلِيًّا مِنْ دُونِ اللَّهِ خَسِرَ خُسْرَانًا مُبِينًا. This ayat is, of course, very profound. So let's go through it very briefly here. Because it gives us really the epitome of evil. the epitome of what evil is and the manifestation of evil. Now, of course, as I said at the beginning, shayateen belong, of course, the chief devil is Iblis, who's a jinn. But there is Hizbul Shaitan min al-ins wal jinn. Right? The party of Satan is of both human and jinn form. We know this, right? Right? Min al-jinni wal ins. Right? Jan wal nas. So they both belong to the same army. The chief, of course, is Iblis. And then the rest are minions that are in a kind of hierarchy. Some of them know they're part of the army. Some of them don't know that they're even a part of the army of Shaitan. However, the chief of this demonic army or demonic force says, I shall mislead your creation. وَلَا أُمْنِيَنَّهُمْ. This is very, very interesting, the word أُمْنِيَنَّهُمْ. Umniyanna literally means I shall give them a sense of aman, a sense of security from your adhab. I shall let them think, for example, they will commit a sin and that you will forgive them. So they'll commit a sin with the niyyah that you will forgive them. So their intention would be, you know what, I'm going to go and commit adultery, na'udhu billah. But God's going to forgive me because then I'm going to do tawbah. And right away we know wala umniyannahum, that this is now, the person has now entered the possession of Satan. Because this is Satan's promise. La umniyannahum. I am going to cast this into their hearts. I'm going to make them think that they will live forever. I'm going to make them think that they have majal, that they have room to ask for forgiveness from Allah tomorrow instead of today. And the moment we go down that road, we shall know, according to the Quran, that we have now, na'udhu billah, we have now, la samahallah, in one way or another, become a willing or unwilling partner of the devil. That is how it is. وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ فَلَا يُبَتِّكُنَّ آذَانَ الْأَنْعَامِ. And I shall order them to cut the ears of cattle. We don't need to go into this now. This was a pre-Islamic practice where they used to mutilate animals. They used to cut the ears open of certain kinds of cattle. وَلَآمُرَنَّهُمْ. And I shall order them to destroy and pervert the creation of God. To pervert God's creation, to destroy it, to change it, to ruin it. And the one who takes Satan as his guardian, instead of God, shall know khasira khusranan mubina, that this person has lost completely. Now, this Shaitan, or this Satan, formerly known, also known as Iblis, as I said, has an army from among jinn and human beings. And they can do a lot of havoc and a lot of damage. In fact, we're told in the traditions that even children in their beds can be affected by evil jinn. What does Abu Abdullah say in Dua Arafah? He says, وَكَلَأْتَنِي مِنْ طَوَارِكِ الْجَانِ. That when I was in the cradle, you protected me from the evil entrances of jinn, from the attacks of jinn, of John. Now, of course, these are the kind of jinn that would belong to the satanic category, right? The believing jinn and non-believing or satanic jinn. Right? And it is Satan that, of course, is ordering them in this sense, but not ordering them in the sense that they sign up on Friday night to be a part of his club at the local motorcycle gang, for example, and they sign up to be a part of Satan's club. No. It's through their sins, through their thinking constantly that I will seek forgiveness tomorrow. I'll let my salah go today. It's through this repeated obedience of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that someone becomes a part of the hizb of shaitan. Right? And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions that in the Quran, and we will get to that. So it's not like necessarily a formal membership, although there are satanic worshippers in this world. Right? Certain singers and musicians make it very open that they worship Satan and they're a part of the army of Satan and they are Satanists and so on and so forth. But the vast majority of people find themselves at a certain time of their life in the hizb of shaitan because of their dhunub, because they have left so many sins unaccounted for. They have not done hisab of their own nafs and their own soul. And that opens up the soul to the occupation of Satan. And this is, of course, this is mashhur and wadih. We know this is in the Quran, it's in the Sunnah, that this is the effect of it. Now, this is why we need to beseech Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for protection. This is why A'udhu billahi minash shaitanir rajim is so powerful and so important. That obviously a baby or a child cannot recite that, but the responsibility is on the parents to protect their children from this evil. To recite the Quran, to recite the ahraz of Ahlul Bayt, the du'as of protection of Ahlul Bayt, to pray their salah. And of course at the end of the day, Imam Hussein is turning to Allah and saying, "Oh God, you are the all-powerful. At the end of the day, I can only turn to you. La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-aliyyil azim. And I'm thanking you for your greatest power and help and inayah and ghawth. That even when I was an infant in the cradle, you ensured that the jinn, even the jinn, would not, so to speak, create problems for me." Even at that stage, we read this in Dua Arafah. Look at the marifat of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. And if this is who is his mother? Could you imagine the du'as of his mother? Sayyidah Zahra, salawatullahi wa salamu alayhi. What did she pray for from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? So he's thanking Allah for his great protection, which of course at the end of the day is also the result of the du'as of Sayyidah Zahra, salawatullahi wa salamu alayha. However, I must make a distinction here. The shayateen can never affect the aql of the ma'soom. The devils cannot affect the aql or the iman or the marifat of the ma'soom. Abadan, never. The only athar or the effect is on the body. That's it. Never on their mind. Abadan. Right? And we see in the Quran, for example, Nabi Ayyub saying that, "And I have been touched by Satan." This is in the Quran again. But it never affected, na'udhu billah, of course, his iman or his aql. Because the Nabi and the Imam is ma'soom. So this is a very important, I want to make this very clear. The Imams are never possessed, abadan, never, by these devils. But their physical outer body can be affected by it. And we see examples of this in the Quran and in the Hadith, of course. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him and his purified family, has said, "Ash-shaytan ithnan," that the Satan is of two types. Shaitan al-jinn is the first one. And this satanic jinn may be pushed away with La hawla wa la quwwatu illa billah al-aliyyul azim. This is very important, brothers and sisters. The Prophet is teaching us how to ward off the satanic jinn. We'll get to a little bit more as to what this jinn does and how they do it and so on. That the ulama like Sheikh al-Mufid and Abu Fath al-Karaji, the traditions have given us very immense details about how it functions and things like this. But la hawla wa la quwwata illa billah. Wa amma shaytanu ins. And as for the demonic human being, they shall be pushed away and cast away with bis-salat ala nabi wa alihi. So the power of salawat ala Muhammad wa alihi is such that it dispels the demonic human beings. That all those devilish humans, right, the humans in devil form, and there are many of them, all right, and Ahlul Bayt refer to them again in the ahadith, right? That those who wish harm towards the Shia, those who wish harm towards the Zuwar are described as shayateen. Min al-jinni wal-ins. Those who plot against the lovers of Ahlul Bayt and Ahlul Bayt are described as shayateen. Not because they walk around with horns on their head. They don't have horns on their head. It's not like what you see on TV. They look actually very beautiful and normal like everyone else perhaps. But that's what makes it so dangerous. In reality, they are a devil. But they present themselves as a perfectly normal human being. And they could be found anywhere. Right? As Imam Sadiq says, they lay in wait to ambush the zuwar of my grandfather, Abu Abdullah. That this army of demons, right? In Al-Kahf is a very beautiful dua where the Imam prays to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect the zuwar of Imam Hussein from the army of the devils. Of the Jan and the Ins. Of the jinn and human beings. Who have joined the army of the devil. And the Ayyamah alayhim as-salam pray constantly. They have numerous ahraz and du'as for protection. Numerous. There's too many to note here. In fact, I have a whole book just of the ahraz. Ahraz are basically du'as for protection from evil of the Prophet and the Imams. And I suggest each and every person must have a hirs from one of the Imams. Lazim. It's extremely important. Because at the end of the day, think of it like this. If we're flying, or actually tomorrow I'm flying to Iran, inshallah. So before I prepare to leave on my trip, I want to make sure my bag is packed. I want to make sure I've packed my, electrical converter and my dua book and everything, right? Then when I get to the airport, I want to make sure they don't, inshallah, let in any crazy people who will come on the plane. I want to make sure the plane is serviced. I want to make sure there's fuel in the plane, that the pilot knows what he's doing, so on and so forth. So inshallah, we reach there safely. Think of our entire life from our birth to our death in the same way. That there's all kinds of akhtar and dangers in the road of life. However, Allah and Ahlul Bayt have given us everything that we need in order to protect ourselves. They've given us the Sharia, they've given us the Sunnah, they've given us the Quran. Of course, Allah has given everything through the wasila of the Ayyamah. Everything comes from Allah, of course. The Quran, the Sunnah, the Dua, the Ziyarah, Tawassul, Sadaqah. But if we don't partake in it, and then we find ourselves, na'udhu billah, becoming satanic or being affected by satanic forces that aim to destroy God's creation, that aim to pervert God's creation, then we are to blame, not Allah, na'udhu billah. God does not present anything except that He's given us the dawa and the medicine and the solution for it. In a spiritual sense, I'm speaking about here. But if we don't know about it, then we relieve our souls completely exposed. For example, we're told in the traditions that the first step to satanic possession is not praying salah on time. Do you know that? There's an ahadith. Go to Al-Kafi, go to the ahadith of Ayyam-e-Taharin. That the effect of not praying the salah on its correct time and afdal waqt is such that that person takes a step closer to becoming a part of Hizb of Shaitan. Not that they will join it, but a step closer. They become more vulnerable. If they willingly and knowingly, without any excuse, just let the time of salah pass. This is not my words. This is not the words of opinion of an arif or an alim. This is kalam Ahlul Bayt. And these devils can do very dangerous things. We're going to talk a little bit about this now, because we need to know what it is that we are protecting ourselves from. So what happens then when the sinner leaves the sins unrepented? Allah says, "Istahwada alayhim shaitan," that Satan then possesses them. Istahwada. How do you define that except for possession? Again, not possession like the exorcist and they start lifting the bed up and it's on its four legs and so on and so forth. No. But their soul becomes furnished by the devil. They now, for example, have trouble crying for Ahlul Bayt. They have trouble crying in dua. The traditions tell us very clearly. There's an entire bab as to why people can't cry. Whether we believe it or not is something else. Whether people want to believe it or not is something else. Ahlul Bayt have given us the asbab and the reasons and the alal. So that's one. Istahwada alayhim shaitan fa'ansahum dhikrullah. And then they are made to forget the remembrance of God. Ulaika hizbu shaitan. And they are the party of Satan. Ala inna hizbu shaitan hum al-khasirun. And they shall be the losers. Because the entire satanic message is a mirage. Maradda, as we say. It's khayaliyah, it's imaginary, as the traditions tell us. It creates this wonderful sense of imagination in our minds. But at the end of that is only khusran, not falah and foes, not success and salvation. It's a road that takes us to the pit of hell, but the road is lined with jewels and diamonds. So it feels so good, it looks so good, it seems so good. But there's one problem. It's in opposition to Allah and Ahlul Bayt. But it feels good at that moment. It tastes so good. This is a maradda. This is a very deep concept, maradda. And the khayaliyah and things like this. It is a very profound sense of something is presented to us as good, but in reality there's no goodness, khairat in it at all. But for some reason we think it's good. And the reason we think it's good is because now the distinction between reality and falsehood is no longer there. Right? One of the effects of possession, of satanic possession is the person, and Allama Tabatabai explains this as well in Al-Mizan, is that the person now cannot see the difference between haq and batil. They have trouble in distinguishing between right and wrong, between the path of Allah and His Messenger and the path of Satan. And it's not because Satan won against God, na'udhu billah. No, it's because that person committed sin, left it unrepented, over and over and over again, until now they became the property of the devil. And then slowly, slowly they begin to see the world through the lens of imagination and not haqq. Through khayal, the lens of khayal. And then they find themselves in the pit of hell, along with all of the other hum al-khasirun, and they are all the losers at the end of the day, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, because God's light will never be put out. No matter how many Shia they killed, no matter how many shrines they bomb, no matter how many people they murder, no matter how many people they abuse, no matter how much destruction and havoc they wreak in the world, the light of God will not be put out. No matter how much they want people to lose hope, to think that they are the winners, They are not. This is what God is saying. هُمَ الْخَاسِرُونَ. They are the losers. خَسِرَ خُسْرَانًا مُبِينًا. The faizeen are the mu'mineen. And their chief is Muhammad wa Ali Muhammad. And that is why, my dear brothers and sisters, we cannot afford to not have closeness to Ahlul Bayt. Imagine if the salat on Muhammad and his progeny is what wards off the devil, then who is Muhammad and his progeny? If that devil that wreaks so much havoc in this world is so scared of the name of the Prophet and his family, yu'bad, as the tradition is, he's cast away, he's put away, then who are these people? That's why, of course, we can never believe that they could be possessed, na'udhu billah, no, by these devils. Second of all, when we speak about the devil changing or ordering people to change or pervert the creation of God, what are some examples of this? I'll give you one example here. And this is a very relevant example to today. Did you know that according to some scientists, marine biologists, that within 50 years or less, there will no longer be salmon and other fish gone, or less at least, 50 years at the max. Because at certain parts of the ocean, did you know that the ratio of bottles to fish is between 1 in 5 or 1 in 10 of plastic bottles to fish in the ocean? That is the destruction of God's creation, such that human beings, because of their arrogance and their senselessness, have wreaked this havoc in the earth. They're destroying God's creation. Another example, that certain kinds of inappropriate media, film and especially inappropriate film. Did you know now that psychiatrists have told us and neurologists, go look up the research, that constant viewing of certain kinds of media rewires the brain? That it actually changes the makeup of the brain, of the way neurons fire through the constant release of dopamine. Go and read the studies in psychiatry. To such an extent that the people that find themselves addicted to this kind of media, and we know the Muslim community is plagued because the highest searches of this media are in Muslim countries per capita. That is the truth. Saudi Arabia at the top of the list. Qatar, Iraq as well is in there. Yes. That's a sad fact. As human beings began to access more broadband, the devil entered the cable. And now some of the highest per capita access of this media is from the lands of Islam. And the effects of this is such that we are told that the actual brain is rewired to such a point that that person then can no longer operate a normal life. There's no need to go into details as to what we mean by that. Psychiatrists have told us that this is a medical crisis. A pandemic. And you know, the person who invented this, the first kind of media which was in print out of California, when he was asked, why did you invent this? He said, to destroy the Christian family. To destroy the concept of the nuclear family. to inject Satan between husband and wife. And Satan has promised that he will order his army to pervert and change the creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is one example among numerous examples. Third example, video games. Did you know, now according to certain studies, read a book called PlayStation USA, the current books on this issue, written by psychiatrists and neurologists. Did we know, think of how devilish this is, did he know that game companies, or those who develop consoles and games, they pay children to do demos of the games. Do you know what they study in those children? The dilation of their pupils. Do you know how disturbing that is? And these games reward people for killing and robbing cars, don't they? That you can get to the next level depending how many people you've killed. Isn't it? That's how many of these games operate, and the most popular ones, right? Killing and stealing and so on and so forth, such that some countries had to ban games like Grand Theft Auto. Is this not the devil in our bedroom and living room? How can then we claim to be, na'udhu billah, free from the devil? When we bring the devil, na'udhu billah, into our bedroom or into our homes or into our living room or the rooms of our children. And then how could that soul then distinguish between the satanic fiction and the reality of God and His Messenger? Cannot. It's a nuqush on the soul, as Allama Tabatabai says. Bel rana ala kulubihim, as the Quran says. That what they've done is now rana ala kulubihim, Surah Mutaffifin. That it now reigns on their heart. It holds them captive. Right, as Allama Tabatabai, it now creates a filter through which they see the entire world and the universe. That's when they hear Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah. Just sit and keep chatting. Why? Why is the soul not moved by it? Of course, one is perhaps a lack of knowledge, but if the knowledge is there, then why is the soul not moved? The Quran tells us, Bel rana ala kulubihim. Quran is clear. That now they have to lie in the bed that they've made. And God says, I didn't oppress them. They oppressed anfusahum, themselves. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And I'll end with one more example of how this functions. That when we read this ayah, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ مَلِكِ النَّاسِ إِلَهِ النَّاسِ مِنْ شَرِّ وَسْوَاسِ الْخَنَّاسِ الَّذِي يُوَسْوِسُ فِي صُدُورِ النَّاسِ مِنَ الْجِنَّةِ وَالنَّاسِ. Now the waswas of nas, of human beings, is sometimes we can see it. It's in front of us. It's an evil that we can see, but sometimes we are convinced by someone, so on and so forth. But it's still something we can see, more or less, the waswas of human beings. That is the temptations, the trickery, the ideas that, for example, an evil friend or a bad friend might try to plant into our head to convince us that something is okay to do when we know in our heart it's not. However, there's also the waswas of jinn. That's also very dangerous. Abu Fath al-Karajiki, one of our greatest fuqaha in the history, a contemporary of Sheikh Ta'if al-Tusi, who lived in the year about 420, 430 of Hijrah, right after the ghaibah of the Imam. He explains in one of his most important books, Kanzul Fawaid, he says, فَأَمَّا كَيْفِيَةُ وَسْوَسَةُ الْجِنِّ. He said, as for the waswas of jinn, how does it work? He says, first we should know that there are bodies that are very subtle and light, like they can go through walls and bend in certain ways. So we can't pick up on them in this way, right? Riqaq, litaf. And then what they do is they arrive at the human being, at the body of a human being, and they hang on the ear of the human. But you can't see them though. Can't see them. But they literally hang onto the ear. They'll be so close to us that it's as if they've become a part of our skin, he says. And when they begin to implant devilish thoughts, and of course this only comes when human beings try to open themselves up to them, when they're constantly missing their salah, when they're constantly neglecting the issues of deen. What happens is, Karachaki tells us, one of our greatest mujtahids and mirage of the past, he says, or in other scholars say, it's almost like blood that runs through your vein. Can you feel the blood that runs through your vein? No, unless you cut yourself, otherwise you can't. That the waswas, or the evil inclinations of jinn, are like that. So subtle. Right, it's the Quran, وَهُمْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. And they don't even realize. And then he says, and they cast words. وَإِذَا سَمِعُوا وَيَشَبُّهُ عَلَيْهِ بِخَوَاتِرِهِ. And to such an extent that if someone really opens themselves up, that they now have trouble distinguishing between their thoughts and the jinn. Between their khawatir and the jinn itself. This is what I mean, that through sin, the person now has trouble distinguishing between the realm of imagination and the realm of reality. And then he says, or rather, then he reports a hadith from Jabir ibn Abdullah al-Ansari, from the Prophet ﷺ, who said, a man came to the Prophet. I'll end with just two more statements and go to the Masaib, inshallah, for tonight. A man came to the Prophet, and he said to the Prophet, I had a dream that my head was rolling, and I was running after it. The Prophet says, don't ever mention this dream in our presence. He says, why? لا تحدث بلعب شيطان بيك. Because Satan came to you in your sleep. Do not mention it in front of others. ثم قال فإذا لعب الشيطان بأحدكم في منامه فلا يحدثون به أحدا. Don't tell anyone about it. And the traditions, of course, say then to take our sadaqah, to pray salah immediately, to get up and pray a 2 rak'ah salah immediately, to do istighfar immediately, right? And to recite La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah al-aliyyil azim, and Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. And then Karachaki says, أن يفعل هذا بالنائم واليقظان. And he says, and this may be done while awake or asleep. وليس هو في العقل مستحيلا. And it is not unreasonable or irrational to believe this. And we know this because Imam as-Sadiq was asked, can you explain to us the difference between a false dream and a real dream? For example, a bad dream. When someone has a dream about something that's really bad, that they've done something bad, or they're committing a sin, or they're doing something haram, right? Doing something very nasty and bad in their dream. Imam as-Sadiq was asked, well, what happens here? Why? You know what he says? This is scary. Imam as-Sadiq says, this is the riwayah in Al-Kafi. The Imam says, وَأَوَّلْ لَيْلَ فِي سُلْطَانْ مَرَدَّ الْفِسْقَ وإنما هي شيء يخيل إلى الرجل وهي كاذبة مخالفة لا خير فيها. That this is a kind of satanic attack, so to speak, on the person in sleep, and they are imagining something that has been almost kind of put forward towards them. And it has no khair and no reality in it at all. Allama Majlisi explains what this means. He says that if we go through a day where we're constantly forgetting Allah, we're constantly not praying, or we've been exposed to a lot of lustful things in the daytime, when we go to sleep at night, the malaika may leave us, and the armies of Satan may join us in our bed. And when the armies and the junood of shaitan join us in our bed, they begin to put these things into our sleep. And that's why we're told as soon as we wake up, we must do istighfar immediately. Because this has been a sign that our soul has now become susceptible to some evil. This is Ayyam. I'm not taking from some book of dreams. This is from Al-Kafi of Kulaini. And that's why salah, 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 as we're told. That the beginning of this is not praying on time. Leave aside missing salah, na'udhu billah, altogether. I mean, imagine if not praying on time, willingly not praying on time, can have an effect on the soul. What about missing salah? That's la samah Allah. We don't even want to talk about that. That's asfalur safilin. That's the bottom of the barrel. Missing the salah altogether. Na'udhu billahi min hadha. We seek refuge in Allah from this evil, inshallah. We're told on the day of Ashura, brothers and sisters, Sayyidah Zainab, as these devils, which is what they were in this sense. They're human beings, but they're the behavior of devils. As these devils crowded around the body of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Right, we're told in the riwayat that they crowded around his body. For some say 3 hours, some say 2 hours. The Imam laid there. And they surrounded his body, Khuli, Sinan, Shimar. And just before they killed him, Sayyidah Zainab ran out of the tent, or walked out of the tent. She charged towards Umar ibn Sa'd, and she said, as she was running, she said, Layta sama'in tabaqat ala al-ard. That if only now the heavens would collapse to the earth. That if only now Qiyamah would come and everything would be over. Can you imagine the power of those words of Lady Zainab? That her brother is laying there, disabled from his wounds. And these shayateen and devils are surrounding him. These enemies of Ahlul Bayt and lovers of Ahlul Bayt are surrounding the body of Imam al-Hussein like wolves. And all she is saying is, oh Allah, if only the skies would collapse onto the earth now. That she was waiting for the crushing eternal response on the death of Imam al-Hussein. That this is the meaning of the musibah of the samawat and the ard. This is the meaning of the tragedy of Imam al-Hussein reverberating and affecting every element of existence. Whether it be the Arsh of Allah, whether it be the Hur al-Ain, whether it be the Malaika or human beings or jinn or ins or whatever it is, everyone is now put into a state of complete shock. When the head of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was decapitated, the riwayat tell us that forever now, the khalq of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has undergone a change itself. Such that the arsh of Allah, iksha'arat lahu adillat al-arsh. That the blood of Imam al-Hussein causes every part of the throne of Allah, of the proverbial symbolic throne of Allah, to shiver and to shake. The dima, the dam of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam. Now imagine the mother who has to be told about what happened to her son. That if the entire heavens and the earth and the arsh of Allah reverberate in a sense, in an earthquake from the murder of Imam al-Hussein, what about the qalb of Sayyidah Zahra? That if the heart of Sayyidah Zahra is the reason that all of this creation is held together, then what happened to her heart? We're told, فُجِعَتْ بِكَ أُمَّكَ الزَّهْرَاء. As Imam al-Hujjah tells us in the ziyarah, that when the deliverer of the death of Imam Hussein came to the grave of the Prophet in Medina, we're told, فُجِعَتْ بِكَ أُمَّكَ الزَّهْرَاء, that your mother went into a state of terror. We're told in another riwayah that Sayyidah Sakina saw Lady Fatima in a dream. And she came to her riding. But at first she did not know who this woman was. So she came towards her and she says, "Who are you?" She says, "I am Fatima." She then says, "Ya Amma jahadu wallahi haqqana." She says, "My mother, wallah, they have taken our rights away. Ya Amma badadu wallahi shamlana." That, oh mother, they have desecrated our family. Ya Amma istabahu wallahi harimana. That, oh our mother, wallah, they have taken away our hurmat. Ya Amma qatalu wallahi al-Hussein abana. That, oh mother, wallah, they have killed our Hussein. Then she says, "Ya Sakina, kaffa bi sawtik ya Sakina, qad quti'at niyat qalbi." That the strings of my heart, meaning my aortas, are breaking because of what you are telling me. And she says that this is the shirt of Hussein. هذا قميص الحسين عليه السلام. Because we're told on the day of judgment that the one that is al-manhur fil wara, the one that was slaughtered like an animal in public. This is not my words, this is from the Ziyarat al-Nahiyah al-Muqaddasa of Sahib al-Asri wa Zaman. Al-manhur fil wara, that the one that was slaughtered in public, that his shirt, his qamis will come on the day of judgment. Sheikh Saduq reports that on the day of judgment, Sayyidah Zahra will come. Imam al-Sadiq says, the awwaleen and the akhareen will be gathered. She will come. Everyone's necks will be down. فَتَأْخُذُ قَمِيصُ الْحُسَيْنِ بِيَدِهَا. And she'll be holding the shirt of Hussein ibn Ali. مُدَمِّخًا بِدَمِهِ, dripping in his dam and his blood. فِي يَوْمِ الْقِيَامَةِ. And she will say, "Ya Rabbi, هذا قميص ولدي. This is the shirt of my son. وَقْضِي بَيْنَنَا وَبَيْنَهُمْ. Judge between us and them according to other riwayat. قَدْ عَلِمْتَ مَا صُنِعَ بِي. For you know what they did to him. According to another riwayah, she will take the shirt of Hussein and she will tie it to the throne. تَحْتَوِي عَلَى سَاقِ الْأَرْجِ. And she will tie the blood-stained shirt of Hussein to the throne of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أَلَا لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ عَلَى الظَّالِمِينَ وَسَيَعْلَمُ الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا أَيُّ مُنقَلَبٍ يَنقَلِبُونَ. ماتم حسين ماتم زهراء.